Good morning. The committee will come to order. First, I want to thank everyone for joining us this morning. I want to especially thank the witnesses for being here today. You're all taking time out of your very busy schedules to talk about this important topic, and Mr. Balderson and I appreciate that. As you noticed, there's a number of committee hearings going on concurrently right now, so members will be coming and going, so don't be undeterred as you're making your statements and answering questions. As the congressman for Colorado's 6th District, I understand the importance of clean and renewable energy for our environment and our economy. We know that climate change is impacting towns and communities across the country, from more intense and frequent wildfires and tropical storms, from the west to east coast and rising sea levels in coastal cities like Miami, to nonstop rain damaging crops and farms across rural America. In my home state, we know the impact on the summer and winter recreation economy very well. Protecting our environment and public health was not always a partisan issue, and it shouldn't be today. Not only does climate change pose a risk to our economy and the health and well-being of all Americans, but as a former Army Ranger, I also understand that this is an acute national security threat. For these reasons, it's critical we move to more clean energy and away from fossil fuels by producing and providing services supporting bold and practical environmental and energy policy for America's future. Doing so will not only be good environmental policy, but also help transform our economy to be more resilient in the future. Through innovation and entrepreneurship, we can address the harmful impacts of climate change while also creating millions of good-paying jobs here in the U.S. that will lead to sustained economic growth. And like they do in so many other sectors, the clean energy economy presents an opportunity for small firms to lead the way by reducing emissions, supporting renewable energy, creating clean energy jobs, increasing efficiencies, and reducing overall environmental footprint. From producing biofuels and instilling energy-efficient equipment to manufacturing components and auditing buildings, clean energy businesses can be found across Colorado. In my home state, we now have over 65,000 jobs in the clean energy sector, creating a cleaner energy supply while growing the jobs of the future. In fact, Denver, neighboring my district, it ranks 8th out of 75 large U.S. cities in clean energy. Across the country, there are over 3 million clean energy jobs, and I believe renewable sources of energy such as geothermal, wind, and solar power is the technology of the future. And since many of the businesses in the clean energy economy take advantage of their local natural resources and do not require massive capital investment like traditional fossil fuels, this sector of the economy is ripe for innovators, entrepreneurs, and small businesses. Of the nearly 360,000 energy efficiency businesses in the United States, roughly 45% of them have between 1 and 5 workers. The same goes for the solar industry, where 70% of businesses have fewer than 50 employees. But while clean energy jobs outnumber fossil fuel jobs nearly 3 to 1, clean energy will still only provide 16% of the country's overall energy needs. Clearly, there is plenty more work to be done and room for these companies to grow and expand. But that ability to expand is hindered by the ongoing problems we hear from many small businesses who are unable to find qualified workers to meet their needs. An aging workforce combined with a growing skills gap among our current workforce is keeping small and large firms from reaching their full potential. So, while demand for clean and renewable energy has continued to grow due to falling prices of wind and solar, better incentives and tax credits and widespread support for environmental responsibility from individuals and corporations, businesses are having a harder time hiring the staff necessary to meet this demand. This is why we are here today. To support the rapid transition of our energy sources and create a forward-looking economy, a massive workforce mobilization effort will be required. And to do that, we need to train Americans of all ages to do these jobs. This should include transitioning the current fossil fuel workforce to ensure that they continue to receive a paycheck, health care, pensions, and other necessities that come from an energy job. This can be done through targeted apprenticeships and job training programs supported by the Department of Labor and partnerships between local businesses, governments, and academia. It can also be accomplished with the support of labor unions that have apprenticeships and certification programs in place to train current workers transitioning out of the fossil fuel industry and the next generation of workers for high-paying jobs with high-quality health care and retirement benefits. We know that small businesses in a variety of industries such as construction, manufacturing, architecture, and the STEM fields all contribute to the clean energy economy. This is a result of federal support for renewables as well as tax incentives for clean energy and energy efficiency. But to reach its full potential, workforce development and training are essential components to creating and sustaining the clean energy of the 21st century. I look forward to hearing from our expert witnesses today on how we can best train the next generation of clean energy workers and empower small businesses so the U.S. can once again be the world leader in energy development, innovation, and environmental protection. And I would now like to yield to my ranking member, Mr. Balderson, for an opening statement.
Chairman Crow, thank you very much, and thank you for your opening statements. I would like to also thank all of you, as Chairman Crow said, the opportunity that you all are here and taking time out of your busy schedule. I am fortunately one of those members that has a markup going on in another committee, so I will be leaving. I apologize for that. But we are really grateful for your time and what it takes to be here, so thank you very much for your effort. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today, our subcommittee will explore the employment opportunities generated by the clean energy economy and examine the readiness of our nation's workforce to meet industry needs. Energy modernization has stimulated innovation and revitalized core industries. Its economic impact is felt nationwide. Last month, the Subcommittee on Rural Development, Agricultural Trade, and Entrepreneurship held a hearing on small business participation in the clean energy economy. Witnesses emphasized the impact of public policies on clean energy industries and business opportunities. Increased financial incentives for energy efficiency technologies and systems has increased demand for contractors that specialize in selling and installing and certifying these systems to homes and businesses. Yet, according to the 2016 Energy Efficiency Jobs in America, 70% of energy efficiency firms have only 10 employees or fewer. We can do more to drive skilled workers towards this emerging industry. Building off that foundation laid in September, today we will focus on how we can ensure that our country's workforce is meeting the diverse needs of clean energy employers. Clean energy small businesses are involved throughout the technology value chain, from research and development to manufacturing and installation. While tech startups need highly educated engineers, local contractors needed construction tradesmen. Unfortunately, our workforce has not yet caught up with this rapidly expanding employer demand. The Brookings Institute found that workers with no more than a high school diploma fill nearly half of clean energy production occupations and earn higher median pay when compared to their peers in other industries. The clean energy sector offers opportunities that are exceedingly rare in our economy, jobs with low educational entry barriers and high yielded pay. Filling said jobs would make a significant difference in low-income communities across Ohio, including my home state of Ohio. A lively and dynamic workforce pipeline is critical to the future of growth of clean energy firms. To make this significant investment, firms need policy consistency and regulatory clarity. In that regard, I'd also like to mention that I'm co-sponsor of related legislation, the Blue Collar and Green Collar Jobs Development Act of 2019, which directs the Department of Energy to establish and carry out comprehensive nationwide energy-related industry jobs program. I believe we can employ this same innovation thinking in today's hearing. Thank you to our witnesses for introducing us to the clean energy workforce and strategies to meet the needs of small employers. I yield back, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Balderson. The gentleman yields back. And if committee members have an opening statement prepared, we would ask that they be submitted for the record. I'd like to just take a minute to explain the timing rules. Each witness gets 5 minutes to testify, and each member gets 5 minutes for questioning. There's a lighting system to assist you so you know how much time you have left. The green light will be on when you begin, and the yellow light will come on when you have 1 minute remaining. The red light will come on when you are out of time, and we ask that you stay within that time frame to the best of your ability. I would now like to introduce our witnesses. Our first witness is Mr. Mark Jackson, the Vice President of Energy Solutions at the Community Housing Partners, a nonprofit that provides weatherization assistance to low-income housing. He oversees the operations of the internationally renowned Weatherization Assistance Program, Research and Training Center, and utility energy efficiency programs. These programs have delivered weatherization services to more than 40,000 households and trained over 38,000 participants in building science and energy conservation techniques. Thank you, Mr. Jackson, for being here today. Our second witness is Mr. Jason Wardrop, the business manager for the Colorado Building and Construction Trades Council in my district of Aurora, Colorado. The council is comprised of 24 craft local unions who represent 14 national and international unions and represent roughly 30,000 skilled working men and women in Colorado. Mr. Wardrop serves the building trades to promote apprenticeships, develop labor standards, and procurement policies at all levels of government. He has decades of experience as a sheet metal worker before representing the Colorado AFL-CIO as president and the Building Trades Council as vice president. Thank you for joining us today, Mr. Wardrop. Our third witness today is Mr. Neil James. Mr. James brings 38 years of experience in electrical utilities, alternative energy, and high-voltage operations. He has a long career working for BP Wind, NextEra Energy, and Texas New Mexico Power. He has held various roles in both construction, operations, and maintenance, providing good perspectives to the challenges of the industry. Welcome, Mr. James. I would now like to yield to our ranking member, who will introduce our final witnesses.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our final witness is Ed Gilliland, Senior Director for the Solar Foundation. In this role, he oversees multiple projects, including Solar Ready Vets, a national program to connect transitioning military personnel with solar training and employment opportunities. He was principal author for the 2015-2018 National Solar Jobs Corps census reports and the 2017 Solar Schools Report. Mr. Gilliland is a certified planner, economic development professional, and a project management professional. He holds 2 master's degrees from the University of Virginia, including an MBA from the Darden Graduate School of Business Administration. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Hearn. Mr. Jackson, we will start with you. You are recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you for having me here today, Chairman Crow and Ranking Member Hearn. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you and the other members of this subcommittee. My name is Mark Jackson. I'm the Vice President of Energy Solutions at Community Housing Partners. CHP was formed over 40 years ago to address the poor housing conditions of low-income families in Virginia. In 1976, CHP became one of the first practitioners of DOE's newly created Federal Weatherization Assistance Program. Through our participation in that program, we recognize the need for robust training opportunities to ensure quality energy efficiency work. Therefore, in 1999, we opened our Research and Training Center to provide building science and energy efficiency training to weatherization providers across the country. In addition to this work, CHP is also an affordable housing manager and developer in 7 states. CHP's scope of work makes us uniquely qualified to provide you information on the energy efficiency workforce and the training opportunities that are available. We are an employer of energy efficiency workers. We contract with small businesses in the energy efficiency sector. We provide training to crews and agencies in the Weatherization Assistance Program, and we've trained over 38,000 energy efficiency and building science workers from both public and private sectors, including code officials, HVAC technicians, and small home improvement businesses. There are reasons why we're talking about specifically energy efficiency businesses today. These businesses are primarily small businesses that are located in every U.S. state. Of the almost 400,000 energy efficiency businesses in the U.S., nearly 80% employ fewer than 20 workers, while accounting for over 2 million energy efficiency jobs in the U.S. And energy efficiency, as we all know, is the fastest growing segment in the energy jobs sector. As one of the largest weatherization providers in the U.S., and in our role as an affordable housing manager and developer, CHP subcontracts with hundreds of small construction businesses across our service footprint. We're immersed in the challenges this industry faces every day. The construction industry is thriving, but over 80% of energy efficiency business report hiring difficulties. Almost half those cite the lack of applicants who are experienced, trained, or have the necessary technical skills to do the work. CHP has posted 10 weatherization technician jobs so far this year in Virginia, and although we've had many applicants for every posting, positions remain open as we struggle to find qualified applicants. Compounding the issue is the lack of a skilled workforce, the expectation that 40% of the current construction workers will retire in the next 12 years. CHP's experience aligns with this trend as well. 30% of our current weatherization workers are over the age of 50. Those hiring challenges are even greater for small businesses as they lack the capital to invest in recruitment, hiring, and training programs. Thus, the importance of quality training. DOE notes that the ability to develop high-performance homes that are energy efficient, healthy, and durable relies on building science education and training. Also, as levels of governments recognize the need for and to implement energy efficiency programs and policies, the success of those programs and policies relies on a robust and well-trained energy efficiency workforce. There's so much opportunity in this sector if these hiring and training challenges can be addressed. The energy efficiency sector also provides economic development benefits to its businesses' communities. Residents who have their homes weatherized by CHP see an average of a 30% savings on their utility bills. And there's the benefit from the jobs created in the industry, of course. As I stated, these jobs are a rapidly growing sector, and they are local. They can't be outsourced, and competition for workers ensures that these jobs pay a living wage if we can find those workers. Less than 10 years ago, through a grant for the Department of Labor, CHP's Training Center successfully partnered with workforce development organizations, community colleges, and universities to provide green energy training to nearly 600 individuals. The CREATES program was incredibly successful, and similar programs may be one of the approach in solving today's crisis. I appreciate the time today you've given me. To restate the main points of my testimony, energy efficiency businesses are small businesses and the fastest growing segment of the energy job sector. Energy efficiency businesses are struggling to find and hire skilled workers. Workforce training is required to replace retiring employees and fill the new positions being created as the sector continues to grow. And energy efficiency programs and policies provide benefits to workers and to the greater communities to which they are implemented. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Mr. Wardrip, you are now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman, and the members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to address you guys today. My name is Jason Wardrip. I am a Colorado native living in Aurora. I am the business manager of the Colorado Building Construction Trades Council. Prior to my position, I was a business representative of Smart Union Number 9 for 10 years and have spent 24 years as a sheet metal worker. Our members are construction workers working in residential, light commercial, industrial, and power industries. My role is to support local unions in the state of Colorado for pre-apprenticeships, apprenticeship standards, and procurement. We've developed registered apprenticeships to give people pathways to become construction professionals. Our apprenticeships recruit transitioning military with the Helmets to Hard Hats program, adults changing careers, and technical schools. We have pre-apprenticeship programs for high school students and underserved populations. We are also developing reentry programs for pre-release offenders in conjunction with the Colorado Department of Corrections. The construction industry in Colorado is changing. Renewables are replacing coal in an amazingly fast pace. And this is causing a ripple effect through the construction industry. I never imagined as a young sheet metal worker that I'd care about the economics of labor dynamics related to coal, gas, and renewables. However, my livelihood and the livelihood of our members depend on us understanding, adapting to the rapidly shifting market. I am pleased to testify to you today that I see a great opportunity for our industry in the new energy economy. As the desire to reduce carbon emissions escalates, our union members will answer the call to retrofit older technology and build the infrastructure of the future. There's a lot of work to be done to create and modify our built spaces to be comfortable, a lot of work to be done to create and modify our built spaces to be comfortable, efficient, and sustainable. Our union members are highly skilled professionals. They get the job done right the first time. Our union workers are efficient and bring creative solutions to the table because we've been properly trained as on-the-job apprentices. Academic studies have proven the labor unions return the biggest bang for the buck. We are economic drivers of the Colorado economy. Our workers have health care and retire with dignity. We take pride in protecting each other's safety, reducing costly injuries and deaths. However, our changing energy market, we are looking to adapt to big changes. The renewable energy market frequently brings construction workers from out of the state at lower wages with little to no benefit packages. We understand that independent power producers run a tight budget. However, I know in-state union contractors can do the job better than the out-of-state labor being brought in. We can show dollar for dollar how we finish renewable projects on time, under budget, using local workers first. As these projects become larger, local hire will keep jobs in communities, particularly those losing jobs in the coal industry. Local workers maintain the economy they live in by purchasing goods and services, paying taxes, and home ownership in their communities. When out-of-state workers are brought in, the local economies suffer because the wages leave with the workers as the projects complete. To keep our jobs local and high quality, Colorado has passed policies in the last year to ensure proper licensing on solar installation and enact best value processes for energy generating projects. Starting in 2020, Colorado requires solar farms that are larger than 300 kilowatts to employ workers that are licensed journeymen or in a registered apprenticeship program. Unions also worked in the with environmental groups to create the Office of Just Transition for coal-dependent communities in the coal-dependent workers in the communities they live in. The new energy economy can provide high-quality jobs for all the trades. We train people to be safe and efficient in our registered apprenticeship programs. I ask you, committee members, to look to our standards in Colorado as a solid start to creating good jobs in the zero-carbon economy. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Wardrop. And Mr. James, you are now recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairman Crow, Ranking Member Hearn, and members of the Subcommittee on Innovation and Workforce Development, thank you for the opportunity to testify on the topic of creating clean energy workforces. My name is Neil James, and I'm Vice President of Operations, Maintenance, and Monitoring at Apex Clean Energy. I have more than 38 years of experience in electrical utilities, alternative energy, and high-voltage operations, and feel I bring a unique perspective on workforce development as an operations and maintenance supervisor with Apex. My remarks today will focus on the U.S. wind industry's rapid growth and the opportunities and challenges we face in recruiting, training, and developing the necessary workforce to meet the increased demand for an expanded clean energy economy. I will also touch on Apex's approach to workforce development. Apex Clean Energy develops, constructs, and operates utility-scale wind and solar power facilities across North America. Our mission-driven team of more than 200 renewable energy experts use a data-focused approach and an unrivaled portfolio of projects to create solutions for the world's most innovative and forward-thinking customers. Headquartered 2.5 hours from here in Charlottesville, Virginia, Apex's work has led to over $7 billion in clean energy investment, equal to 5 gigawatts of clean energy being added to the grid, and we operate nearly 2 gigawatts from our remote operations facility, also in Charlottesville. Apex was built with a singular focus in mind to accelerate the shift to clean electricity. The U.S. wind industry is made up of manufacturing, construction, operations and maintenance, developers, engineers, and business-trained individuals. Currently, the industry comprises of more than 114,000 workers across all 50 states. Industry experts predict that by 2020, the industry will support nearly 250,000 American jobs. Wind turbine technician is the second fastest growing job in the country. Only solar photovoltaic installers rank higher. The wind industry employs more Americans than nuclear, coal, natural gas, or hydroelectric power generation. At Apex, we have 5 core company values: entrepreneurship, integrity, professionalism, safety, and sustainability. When we recruit new employees, we look for individuals who embody these core values, and we strive to live these values both professionally and personally. I want to take 1 minute to provide an example of what this looks like at Apex. My colleague Marco Pineda came to the U.S. from Honduras as a small boy. Marco went to college, received a degree in accounting, and at the time, work was scarce, so he took a job in the oil field. Not long after, he recognized an opportunity in clean energy near his home in South Texas and began working for Vestas as a wind technician and soon site manager. In 2015, Apex brought him on board. He's managing our Cameron Wind facility. He since has been promoted to a regional operations manager, operating 9 wind and solar assets across the U.S. and Canada. Marco has exemplified our core values. And to add, he became a United States citizen this year. Apex also firmly believes that veterans bring some of the best talent to the wind business. The skills they learn defending our country transition well to positions in clean energy. At Apex, our company is veteran-led at every level, from our CEO, Mark Goodwin, serving as a pilot with the Navy, COO, Ken Young, West Point, United States Army, our asset manager, Dan Wetzel, Marine Corps captain, operations, Aaron Strobel, Navy Airman, the list goes on. Meeting the growing demand of renewable energy will require additional investment in finding the necessary workforce. We must create more opportunities to educate and train individuals for careers in the clean energy economy. We need more schools to offer these training opportunities if we're going to meet the demand. Potential ways to achieve this include creating greater awareness of the opportunity, expanding public-private partnerships, and building out incentive structures for schools to initiate these programs. Where schools have programs, create incentives for them to collaborate broadly with the industry. Also, members can support the bipartisan Wind Workforce Modernization and Training Act introduced by Senators Ernst and King. This is an exciting time to be in the clean energy sector. The industry is strong today and our future looks even stronger. And though we see challenges in establishing the necessary workforce to aid in the transition to a cleaner energy economy, the opportunity is far too great for us to fall short. Mr. Chairman, almost 2/3 of the committee members have Apex facilities either in development or construction in their states. I invite you and your constituents to visit one of our projects. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify. I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Mr. James, and I know we all appreciate the invitation as well, and I'm sure several of us will avail of ourselves of it, so appreciate that.
Look forward to it.
Yeah. Mr. Gilliland, you are now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Crow, Ranking Member Hearn, and members of the subcommittee. My name is Ed Gilliland. I'm Senior Director at the Solar Foundation. I oversee our programs there, including a number of workforce-related solar programs and principal author of our National Solar Jobs Census. Our census in 2018, we found that there's 242,000 solar jobs in the United States. Of those jobs have grown 159% since 2010 when we first began doing our census. The growth has primarily been due to declining prices and a favorable policy environment. Solar jobs are not just in installation, but also include manufacturing, wholesale trade and distribution, law, design, finance, and a host of areas. Of the solar companies, about two-thirds of the employment in the solar companies are in the installation sector of the solar, and that is the fastest growing sector. It has tripled its employment since 2010, over tripled its employment. But all of the sectors are experiencing growth. Even manufacturing has grown 35% since 2010. Now, the past 2 years, we have seen an annual decline of about 3 to 4% in solar, but we are expecting 2019 to resume employment growth. Despite the recent decline, though, there was growth in 29 states in the district in solar energy jobs. So some of the leading states include Florida, Illinois, Texas, Ohio, Washington. So even with the recent decline in jobs, solar employers continue to struggle to find and retain qualified employees. In 2018, 26% of the solar employers reported that it was very difficult to hire qualified employees, and that's up from 18% the previous year. We generally credit this because of the low unemployment rate and the very competitive construction industry that is also seeking many qualified employees. Hiring challenges also vary by market segment. Again, in the installation segment, 33% of employers reported that it was very difficult to hire qualified employees. Geographically, there's a lot of variation as well. So, for instance, in the area which is the East, South, Central region, which includes Alabama, Kentucky, Mississippi, and Tennessee, 43% of the solar employees reported that it was very difficult to find qualified employees. That is likely due to these states as being emerging markets for solar, and so it is more difficult for employers to find the qualified employees in these states. The solar industry offers a rewarding career and relatively low barriers to entry. Most solar jobs do require experience, but only a majority do not require a bachelor's degree. Training and certifications are important for entry level, or not that important, required for entry level, but are important for career advancement. So what are we looking at in the future? Well, if by 2030 we want solar to reduce the electric sector greenhouse gas emissions by 35%, we're going to need solar to provide 20% of the power to the grid. And that's going to require 600,000 employees, about 400,000 more than we currently have. What will they be working on? There's going to be more automation, so there's going to be more needs for skills, higher skill levels, and despite the growing automation, we expect that to further drive down prices and drive up demand. There'll be more operations and maintenance jobs. There'll be more jobs in storage. And then there are going to be more jobs in these emerging states. Thank you so much for the chance to testify, and may the Houston Astros strike out many times.
Thank you, Mr. Gilliland. I think you'll find a lot of unanimity in that last statement, in this room in particular. So I will begin by recognizing myself for 5 minutes. I'd like to begin with Mr. Wardrip. You know, I introduced earlier this year a bill, the Save Energy Act, which will allow homeowners basically to have a $500 tax credit to make energy efficiency improvements to their homes. So that could be insulation, energy efficient appliances, doors, windows, things of that nature. And I know in Colorado, we've had experience in the past when there have been tax credits along those lines. We've seen a vast increase in economic activity, particularly in the building trades, as more people are employed to actually do that work, to make those improvements. And it also increases the value of homeowners' homes as well as they make those improvements. So I'd love your thoughts, and then go to Mr. Jackson as well very briefly. I'd love your thoughts on how you think that a tax credit like mine in the Save Energy Act would help promote your fields and accomplish what it's designed to accomplish.
Thank you for the question. I think that, in my opinion, that would help us certainly grow. We don't do a lot in residential, but we do have residential groups. Be the next emerging opportunity for us in the state of Colorado. We have incredible apprenticeships, registered apprenticeships that are very versatile. We can change our training to whatever the necessities are. So I think for us, and I think that it would be fantastic. I think that as a homeowner, I would love to have that opportunity to retrofit my house with proper windows to save energy. So.
Thank you for the question. I would echo what Mr. Wardrip also talked about. I think we've seen things like this over the last 10 years, back in when we had some economic struggles in the early part of this decade. We were seeing a lot of incentives out there from utility companies through our state energy offices, and it definitely drove demand, especially around energy efficiency rebates and upgrades to homes. And we know that especially at the $500 level, that's actually driving work for small businesses to come into homes, to actually do things like insulation upgrades, air sealing, replacement of windows and doors and things like that to improve energy efficiency. So I think that would be a great win.
Mr. James and Mr. Gilliland, both of you talked about the challenges of finding qualified employees in the pipeline. So starting with Mr. James, I'd love your thoughts, as an employer, where are you finding these folks, and what, in your view, is the biggest barrier to people going into this industry and having careers?
Thank you for the question. Historically, we've looked to our veterans for for our workforce. Obviously, the training that they receive is next to none, and they come in very well qualified to take the positions that we have available. Another avenue is the community colleges. They have excellent two-year degrees, similar to apprenticeships, that they come in with the basics in electrical, mechanical, and hydraulics, which is the foundation of the wind turbines, and solar for that matter on the electrical side. So the community colleges are another point of emphasis. AWEA is driving the development of the workforce as well through some qualified electrical worker programs and some different incentives that we're working on there as well. So it's a holistic approach to gathering the qualified personnel and ensuring that they have a good base training to come aboard.
Thank you.
Sure. So we're seeing there is a lot of opportunities for veterans and transitioning military to enter the solar field. The employers, as just evidenced by Mr. James' comment, really favor the service experience. We have seen a lot of, as I mentioned earlier, there isn't a tremendous need for training for entry-level jobs, although companies do express a need for some kind of standard training opportunities. But it's not I would say, an extensive, I mean, we're talking about a week or 2 weeks of training is typically what the larger companies provide to entry-level employees. It's harder for smaller companies because they don't have those established programs. But there's certainly also a need for incumbent training. In order to advance from entry-level to a field lead, then there's a lot of opportunities, a lot of need for in that incumbent training.
Thank you. Appreciate that. My time has now expired. The ranking member, Mr. Hearn, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the witnesses being here today. You know, as a mechanical engineer and as a small business owner for over 34 years across multiple industries, as a person who's created thousands of jobs in my career, I understand the importance of developing high-skilled workers and certainly getting people in new industries and how important it is. Additionally, you mentioned career centers. I was fortunate enough in high school to do 2 years and get a drafting certificate. So just a broad background and experiences in our vocational schools as well. You know, given these program successes and the increased demand for skilled workers, it is vital that we utilize the available workforce development programs to educate workers' interest in the energy industry. However, we need to be realistic in our approach to increase reliance on renewable resources, as we currently do not have the means to become 100% reliant on renewable energy without horrible effects on hardworking Americans. I don't think you're advocating a normal free market transition, as I'm hearing, so I appreciate that. And I say this because I'm also a member on the Natural Resources Committee, where I've seen a plethora of partisan radical socialist policies, like we'll talk about the Green New Deal. There's conversations going on about that. I'm sure you're keenly aware of all the details there. Which is outside of the free market transition, that do nothing but impose impossible mandates that would be even more difficult for you to fill those jobs in the immediate as people are coming off other energy sectors. So I've also talked about how bipartisan this committee has been in finding solutions for small businessmen and women. I spoke to that on the floor just last week to the chairwoman and the ranking member of this committee about how we have moved forward to find workable bills that help benefit small businessmen and women who are trying to grow their businesses, find available employees, and put them to work. So again, it's really important that we recognize we have all these resources, and then also what you all are doing to make that work as well. I'm very interested, I know Chairman Crow is, based on his military background. I'd like to expand on this Solar Vets program that you were part of. I think you're trying to bring that back, Mr. Gilliland.
Yes.
Could you talk to us about the successes of that program and why it stopped and why it's starting back up and what your thoughts are?
Sure. So the initial version of Solar Ready Vets was focused on setting up training programs for 10 military bases around the country. We worked with the Department of Energy on working with, say, nearby community colleges to set up training programs, recruit service members, the transitioning service members into these programs, and there were a number of successes. It varied depending upon base and on the various quality of the programs, but a number of transitioning service members did matriculate through these programs, and many got jobs in solar. The new version, the one we're working on now, is including veterans as well as transitioning service members. And it also is focused on some of the policy challenges that we ran into before. So one of the issues we ran into before was that sometimes it was difficult for vets to use their GI Bill for solar-related training. And so on this version of the Solar Ready Vets program, we're actually have a task, a focus, of one of our areas of focus is to work with nationally and with community colleges on getting more acceptance of the GI
So, Mr.
Bill.
Gilliland, if I could, just reclaim some of my time here, just so I don't run out of time, because I want to ask you a couple questions. I think you're starting to allude to it. If we could help out, through this committee, one of the things this committee does very well is to take where some of these bottlenecks are and help get this information and legislation pushed through other committees. I think you're referencing TAPS, where you're transitioning out of the military, being able to get into some of these programs that are GI qualified. And as an example, we have a great, probably the second best, I would claim to be the first best technical school program in Oklahoma. And we also are the #2 wind producer in the country. And yet we don't have and we also probably have one of the highest per capita veterans, 115,000 in Northeast Oklahoma alone. One of the 7 VA regional hospital programs. And so there are a lot of things around veterans, yet we don't have a program like this to help our military men and women transition into these high-paying jobs as this industry continues to grow. Again, in a state that relies on fossil fuels as a major contributor to its budget. And so I'd really appreciate as we go forward if we can get that information from you to the chairman and to the ranking member of the subcommittee and to Chairwoman Balescas and the ranking member Shabbat, so that we can help you get this program back up and going in a timely fashion. Thank you all. Sorry I ran out of time. I have a ton of questions for you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Hearn. The gentleman's time has expired, and I will just reiterate his comments about the nature of this committee and how bipartisan it is, and we take a lot of pride in that. Our approach traditionally has been we find areas of overlap and common agreement to get things done, and I think a great testament to that is the fact that we have actually passed dozens of bills this year unanimously out of this committee, and we're very proud of that fact. Now the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Schneider, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate you calling this hearing. I want to thank the witnesses for joining us today, for sharing your experiences and perspectives in what is an increasingly important issue. I come from Illinois. Actually, I come from Colorado originally, Mr. Wardrop, a native, but I moved to Illinois. It's where I've had my home for the last, now 40 years, and it's where I have the privilege of representing. In our state, 3 years ago, we passed the Future Energy Jobs Act, which will help power our state's investment in the green economy in that future. You touched about in Colorado, which I'll come to in a second. We passed the bill, Illinois passed the bill, because consumers want to be able to choose renewables, and utilities around the country are making investments in new green energy infrastructure. It's crucial that in our state, the Illinois Future Energy Jobs Act, one of the crucial things it did was to make the necessary investment in our workforce so that we could meet the demands over the next decade of the new types of jobs that the green energy economy is going to bring. To do this, our Illinois legislature brought together the educational infrastructure of community colleges, which we have many wonderful ones, 2 in my district, and the know-how of the networks of organized labor. The legislation is expected to help create literally thousands of clean energy jobs in Illinois, and hopefully create a pipeline through which we'll train these future green energy workers. And that's because its success relies on one critical stakeholder, and that's organized labor. And Mr. Wardrop, you mentioned you were part of SMART and a sheet metal worker. I'd be interested in your perspective of how organized labor will be a critical resource as we move forward in the clean energy revolution. As you mentioned, in Colorado, renewables are replacing coal at an extraordinary rate, and with my family's all still there, I've watched it with keen interest. And how will labor be central in closing the green energy skills gap?
Thank you for the question. So again, I go back to that our registered apprenticeships are the most versatile training programs out there. We can train to what the necessities require. So without really much effort, we already have many wind opportunities with the IBW locals, as well as electrical transmission lines, things of that nature. We already do hoisting and rigging, iron work, that type of thing. We're ready to be there. We're ready to do the work. We just have not done a lot of that work in there. The other thing that we bring to the table is, as those power plants are being closed and as the mines are reducing production substantially in the state of Colorado, we have the workforce available. They're going to be available starting in 2022 and going all the way up to 2040 due to the utilities cutting the coal production and going to solar arrays and some gas and mostly wind and solar. So we have the workforce available. We are willing to train those people and transition them to be able to do and answer the call of the renewable futures.
And maybe I'll turn to Mr. James. You do industrial scale solar.
That is correct, yes.
One of the concerns we have for the communities, like in Colorado, where there's a decline in demand for the coal, is we want to make sure that the people in these communities have opportunities. Are there opportunities for these folks to be trained and find employment in industrial scale solar that will allow them to stay close to home? As a father of boys in their 20s, I want my kids close to home. They're not now.
Yeah.
We want our grandkids close to us. That's true where I live. I think it's true for every parent who hopes to be a grandparent. We want our kids close to us.
That's right. And I failed to mention, Mr. Snyder, that as the more traditional generating technologies close for various reasons, efficiencies and those types of things, the workforce that is left there are a very skilled workforce.
Right.
One that have the very skills that we're looking for, both in solar and in wind. So yes, that is another pipeline I failed to mention as we talked about the community colleges and the technical schools and the veterans. Already trained employees from a downtrodden type of technology, or that's no brainer.
Hopefully,
We pick them up.
We can transition.
Pick them up, yes.
With my few seconds left, I just want to go back and emphasize. I think it was you, Mr. Wardrop, who mentioned helmets to hard hats. With my colleague, Mr. Spano from Florida, on this committee, bipartisanship, what the chairman touched on, we're pushing a legislation that will reauthorize and move forward the boots to business. Working with our veterans and military personnel who are transitioning back into civilian life, there's a lot of great opportunities. And so I think making sure we have the workforce, making sure that the people who want to be entrepreneurs see a pathway in this field, there's a lot of opportunity here. We shouldn't let it pass us by. And with that, I yield back.
Thank you. The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Kim, is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member, for holding this hearing. And thank you to the witnesses. Thanks for coming on out and talking with us here. I just have a couple of questions I just want to jump into. My district in New Jersey, there are a lot of jobs that are related to what it is that we're talking about here, about 3,500 jobs when it comes to energy efficiency, a lot when it comes to solar manufacturing installation. And as I talk to the business owners there and the workers there, what we're trying to think about is just understand the trend lines, and what we say is, what is our vision for our community, not just next year, but 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road. When I was looking through some of the material prepped for this hearing, we're talking about how energy efficiency is the fastest growing sector when it comes to energy sector. And talking about the growth in that way. But I guess what I want to glean from you to start at a big picture is, where do you guys see things going from here? Especially let's start with the energy efficiency side of things. What kind of growth should we expect over the next 10 years? What particular types of jobs within there do you see being the ones that are in demand? And then, are we keeping up with the training side of things to make sure that we're able to sustain that type of growth going forward? So I'm not sure if anyone in particular wants to speak to that. Mr. Jackson, you're kind of nodding your head a bunch. You want to take a first crack?
Absolutely, that would be wonderful. Actually, you bring up some great ideas and questions. So we actually see energy efficiency, like most do, as the cheapest fuel. It's the first fuel. And we look at energy efficiency as answering the call for most homes and buildings first, before actually bringing in things like renewables, wind, solar, programs like that. What we are seeing in Virginia over the last 5 years, so if we look back at 2014, specific to low-income energy efficiency programs just for utilities, we were around $500,000 in 2014. In 2022, we're projecting about $50 million in programs. That's a huge growth for our industry in Virginia around energy efficiency, not around renewables. This is just energy efficiency. What we're doing to meet that demand is specifically in our training center, and we've been doing this for years, is we actually train and credential employees and provide career ladders within the Weatherization Assistance Program. And we train in 26 states. Most of the states that are represented from this committee, we train in also. New Jersey, we have a state training contract. And we provide career ladders, but then those credentials are transferable and portable between public and private sectors. And that's huge, so employees can actually move between those sectors, especially for small subcontractors that actually will do work for the Weatherization Assistance Program, and then also do private industry work for homeowners.
Just kind of add another element to this, Mr. James. I wanted to kind of seek some of your expertise on this. My district's a district with Jersey shoreline. There's a lot of talk in my state about offshore wind, and just as I'm just trying to get a sense of the workforce side of things. Help me understand, what are the differences in terms of the training needed, the expertise needed for those working on installation of onshore versus offshore?
Sure, that's a great question, Mr. Kim. The similarities are very much alike with respect to the turbine. Once you get up off the off of the water line and in the tower and the nacelle and what have you, obviously the resource to get to the tower is a little bit different, and cranes and those types of activities for some of the major correctives or maintenances might require a little additional training. Safety is another aspect that is looked at a little bit differently out in the water versus inland. But overall speaking, there are not a lot of differences in the qualifications or training requirements for a technician to work either inland or offshore.
And last final question, Mr. Gilliland, over to you. I just wanted to kind of get your thoughts on something. I get asked a lot about just the installation of solar systems for folks in the district, and basically what folks are just kind of asking me about is what kind of guarantee do they have, or what kind of assurances do they have in terms of, knowing that they're going to be able to reduce their energy bill over the long term? Just in terms of just the concerns that they have about high cost of utilities and other things like that. So I guess I just kind of wanted to hear from you. What's sort of the best pitch here? What should I be saying to, or what should folks be saying to my constituents about that? Just in the few seconds we have left.
Sure. So first of all, solar is upfront investment, and so it's all CapEx, and then it pays off over time. It's never going to vary. So energy costs will go up and down. They could go way up, but your solar, once it's done and constructed, it's a stable cost curve for the rest of the life of the system.
Yeah.
So that's, and the cost is going down. The cost to develop solar, even in the last year, has dropped 7 to 11%.
Just in the last year.
Just in the last year. So it's a great deal. It's a terrific opportunity.
That sounds good. Well, I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. The gentleman yields back. Now I'd like to recognize Ms. Davids from Oklahoma.
Kansas.
Kansas.
That's okay. Well, thank you, Chairman. And I also appreciate all of the folks who came to offer testimony and help us better understand this. I represent the Kansas 3rd Congressional District, which is the Kansas City metro area. And there are a lot of folks in our community and in my district who are very concerned about making sure that we address issues of climate change and resiliency. And I often cite a Weather Channel Climate Disruption Index that puts the Kansas City metro area as the likely to be 5th most impacted of 25 metro areas that they looked at because of climate change. And our area faces both drought and flooding issues, and that is only going to be exacerbated as we move forward. So the transition to renewables is something that I am very interested in, and that is not just for buildings and structures, but also for transportation and infrastructure, as I sit on that committee. One of the things that I'm really proud of is that 40% of Kansas's energy comes from wind energy. We produce a lot of wind energy out there, and I'm hoping that we can continue that push in that direction. But one of the things that I wonder about from you all is how can our committee and the SBA be helpful in making sure that we're providing incentives and investments into that space where it makes sense? And I think about that because wind is obviously in the Kansas area and the Plains area great, but solar is better in other places. So I want to make sure we're incentivizing but not restricting progress on that. And I'll open it up to, I see some head nodding, so. Mr. James?
All right. Ms. Davids, thank you. I've had the pleasure of working on several Kansas wind farms and projects in the past, so you're right, there is a lot of wind in Kansas. So I think to your question, for us, it's back to the growth that we're going to see in the next couple of years in both wind and solar is going to be staggering, and developing that workforce is going to be key. Several have mentioned other ideas and places to get that resource, but I fall back to the community colleges and the grants and some of the support that maybe the military veterans could gather from the committee in order to be directed in our way, because the jobs are going to be there and definitely need filled.
So, Mr. Waldrop, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about, I think the Armed Services is an amazing place for people to learn skills that are going to, and leadership that, and especially entrepreneurial skills that are going to be very beneficial as they move forward after their time serving. But the trades, and I think about apprenticeship programs and very technical skills that folks who are part of various unions. Can you talk a little bit about the positive impact that those things can have as we move into a more renewable energy sector, and maybe what your vision for that is?
Yes, on both. So, let me start with the second one first. The vision that I have is that, of course, that we would make sure that the workers that currently hold the work in coal are able to transition into the work going into renewables. But there has to be a reality that those people make a very good living. And so to retrain at 50% of what they currently would make, that is unreasonable. So therefore, as you asked earlier, and sorry to go back to the previous question, I think that if you are going to provide incentives, then that incentive must have a stipulation that states that these people are going to make dollar for dollar all the way to their pensions and health care. So I think that is something to my core, is something that needs to be held, that needs to be accountable for the renewable. Secondly, we also see Helmets to Hard Hats, as well as other veterans programs to bring in veterans into our apprenticeships and grow in the renewable market, knowing that that is really what the new power world is going to be about. And we welcome that. So I think, hopefully I covered most of it.
Thank you. I appreciate it, and I yield back.
Thank you. The gentlelady from Kansas yields back. I'd like to recognize myself for a few more minutes here for additional questions. And this relates to something that Mr. Hearn, who unfortunately had to go off to another hearing, brought up, but it's a concern we've talked about. Climate change is, of course, one of my top concerns, and I'm doing a lot of stuff here to address it. At the same time, I do have a lot of conversations in my community, in my district, about people that are being caught up in that transition. And I know, Mr. Wardrip, you talked about that earlier. These are folks that, sometimes are working paycheck to paycheck. They have to be able to pay their rent and their mortgage. They're supporting families. We are experiencing firsthand in Colorado a transition from fossil fuels, from coal-fired power plants to renewable energy, and there's great opportunity there, and there are tremendous careers available in that area. But we do want to make sure that it's just and it's equitable and it's seamless, and these folks who are supporting their families have the ability to do it. And that's one of the reasons why I'm a huge proponent of apprenticeships, because people can learn on the job, they can be paid, they continue to support their families while they're making that career transition. So with that as a background, starting with you, Mr. Wardrip, what do we have to do to expand the opportunities in those apprenticeships? Helmets to Hard Hats is obviously a clear example of people making the transition from military to civilian life, but other apprenticeship programs, how do we kind of change the mindset and increase that pipeline so that people can actually do that and do it in a way that supports our economy, supports the transition we need to make for our environment, but also can support their families as well?
Thank you. So first things first is get rid of the stigma that we are a closed shop. We welcome everybody. There's nobody that we wouldn't welcome, as long as they can, they want to come and work, give us 40 hours, be there at 7 o'clock in the morning. We would welcome them all day, every day. I think that's the number one thing. The other thing would be to partner with independent power producers. What we have seen in Colorado is we sadly haven't had much of a partnership. We do some work, but it's to the extent it's very little. We would like to figure out how to make sure that when we're doing construction, that we have the opportunity to have the local workers. And I mean the people that live in the towns where the coal is being taken out of. And then solar arrays and wind should be put back where those towns are losing the coal. Those workers should have first shots at that. And then, of course, go into the county and then expand out to the state, whatever it takes. But make an outward circular motion to be able to have workers from the area do the work, specifically in the state, at the farthest, and then bring people in from out of state to participate doing that work. I think that helps the economy. I think that helps the communities that are going to be, frankly, decimated in many parts of Colorado. And then it also, again, we're versatile enough that we can train to do work in Craig from Grand Junction, which is about a 100-mile drive. We're versatile enough and willing to do that work. That's what construction workers do.
Thank you, Mr. Wardrip. Any other comments or thoughts on that? Yeah, Mr. Gilliland.
So first of all, we did prepare a full report on solar workforce development that has a big section on apprenticeships, and that's referenced in the material that we submitted. I will say that that even despite saying that there's a lot of entry-level solar jobs that don't need a lot of training. We do see there's a tremendous opportunity for apprenticeships in solar. We are in our new Solar Ready Vets program. We're actually looking at the registered apprenticeships at the Department of Labor and seeing how we can fit solar into their system. So we see that as a very good opportunity for solar.
Thank you. Seems to me there's also a cultural mindset that needs to shift here as well, right? You know, for decades, we have a K through 12 pipeline, and we have a culture that, tells young folks that to have a career and a middle-class life, you have to go to a 4-year college or university. Yet we see that we have a substantial deficit in America today on the trades and crafts and highly qualified workers in this field that can have very strong middle-class life and support their families in these industries. So from a cultural perspective, what are you all doing on the ground to communicate that to people in your community and young folks that you can build a life and have a career and do it in this way?
Yeah, I'll start off, Mr. Crow. In all of our development areas, different states across the U.S., we hold public forums. And those are very successful in spreading the word of the opportunity and the challenges that we have as an industry in the workforce, in the development. So that's a primary communication tool that we have, is just talking to the public, making them aware of the opportunity and what it takes to get that started. And that's been received very well.
If I may for a moment. So very similar, we spend time out in the field at community colleges and actually high schools. So what we're seeing and hearing a lot from the younger population generation is the concern about the burden of college debt. So I have to go to a 4-year college. Well, now I have to get a master's degree if I really want to have earning potential, and then I've got that debt I may carry for 10 to 20 years. So we're actually starting to see younger population from the high schools that will finish and then come to us actually, and our program is very much like an apprentice program. Most of our folks, they start out with 1 week of training, and then as you step up through the career ladder, you take additional courses. Our energy auditors can take as much as 9 weeks of courses over a 2-year time frame. And I would tell you also within our industry, especially at Community Housing Partners, our average tenure is 18.5 years. Once folks start in our program, they stay in our program. And we've seen that over and over because it's a passion to save energy and to help people.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Any other comments on that? All right. Thank you to all of you and all of the witnesses today for taking time out of your busy schedules to be with us. As we've heard today, small businesses are at the forefront of the clean energy economy, promoting new technologies in renewable energy and energy efficiency. Whether it be in the production of biofuels, renewable energy, or energy-efficient products, small businesses are playing a key role. I want to thank our witnesses for being here and sharing the challenges and opportunities that they see out in the communities and on the ground every day. I look forward to working with my colleagues on this committee on both sides of the aisle to address and pursue policies that we should consider to train workers and grow this industry. I'm glad we share the priority of energy independence and supporting small business growth and innovation in this new and exciting sector. I would ask unanimous consent that members have 5 legislative days to submit statements and supporting materials for the record. Without objection, so ordered. And if there's no further business to come before the committee, we are adjourned.